Hello everybody, ciao a tutti and welcome to Art with Ms.B. Today is my video number 9 and we are still working on the element of texture. Now if you didn't follow my previous video number 7 and 8, I highly recommend you to do so, just because in these two videos we were already practicing together about the elements of shapes and texture. We know now the differences between a real texture, which is something that we touch, we can touch right with our fingers, and we have different feelings out of it, and implied texture, which is the optical illusion of texture that artists apply on paper, on canvas, or different surfaces that they use to create art. Then we also use the element of shapes, and we know now the differences between geometrical shapes like rectangles, squares, triangles, and the organic shapes like a shape of a cloud, of a tree, of a hand. In the first practice, remember, we focus on geometrical shapes. We use lines, trace the shapes, create a design, a little train, and then we had fun in creating a beautiful background, for which I introduce you the technique of drawing, actually sketching a landscape, painting the landscape with watercolor, create an optical illusion with implied texture and feel the real texture. In the second practice was a shorter practice, very fun. However, we use an organic type of lines, which is very natural, right, to trace our hands, which is another organic shape, and then we create a different texture for each one of the fingers. So we call the texture hand, and we did like the fur, we did the scales, we did the brick, the cactus, and the burlap sack, right? And I show you different technique, different type of strokes, short lines that you can use to create this optical illusion of texture. Today we're going to do something very different, and we're going to get inspired by one of the greatest master of all the time, Vincent van Gogh. Now, I'm not going to show you personally any images of Van Gogh. However, if you want to pause the video and go and open another page and click like type Van Gogh images, you will see many of his amazing painting, from still life to landscape to portrait to self-portrait, right? And what you will notice is like the texture. Now, Van Gogh was able to actually apply and interpret and represent the two types of texture, the implied texture, so the optical illusion of a texture, and the real texture. Because if you could touch, and you will never touch, even if you go to the museum, never touch, but if you could touch actually one of his pieces, you would actually feel the thickness of the strokes, the thickness of the oil painting that he used, hundreds of years ago. So why did he do that and how? He used a technique that we call impasto, and he used oil painting with a very heavy body. When we say heavy body for what concerns a paint, we mean that the paint is very thick, it's very dense, right? And once it dry, it creates that body, that thickness on top of the canvas. Also use like the technique of brush strokes. So instead to spread the colors traditionally, he really did stroke by strokes. In this, he actually created changing the direction of these strokes. If you look at, for example, Starry Night, or if you look at a beautiful sunflower, changing the direction of these strokes created the optical illusion of different texture, the texture of the air and the wind in the sky, the texture of the grass, the texture of the trees, etc. But also the real texture, because the paint was completely dry, you could feel this texture with your hands, with your fingers, right, on the canvas. So we are not going to use oil pastel. In the description box, I will add, of course, the list of all the materials. What we need, just so you know, is like a thick piece of paper, and actually I'm using a small piece of paper so the practice doesn't get too long. Remember when we did the first exercise about the texture with the train and the landscape? I cut my paper in half, and this is the second half that I will use today. So it's a watercolor or mixed media paper, Bristol velo paper. If you have a piece of cardboard, you can use that as well, as long as it's flat, right? You can do something bigger than mine, whatever feel comfortable for you. Something has to be thick, because today we like something that is thick, because today we're gonna use a painting. Oh my, I just like make all of my little bottle of acrylics fell, but it's okay. We are gonna use brushes, of course, so maybe a medium, a small, and a smaller brush. Keep 2-3 brushes next to you. A cup filled with water. What is wrong with me? Blah, 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 water. to rinse the brush when we switch colors, and then paper towel to tap and clean the brush and dry it up. We are going to use acrylics for the very first time. The reason why I don't use oil painting is just because I feel that is a very challenging media for beginner and for children. It is also much more expensive than acrylics, and as I told at the very beginning in my video 1, I want this channel to be affordable, approachable, flexible. I want you to feel that you're able to create art with what you have available. And if you don't have the same supplies that I have available, it is perfectly okay. You can, for today, maybe watch the video and then go and grab the materials that you need. And this type of acrylics, I bought them specifically for this project. They are very scholastic. You can find them if you live in the United States. You can find them in Walmart, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, on Amazon. If you live in Europe, I'm pretty sure not only on Amazon, but you will have a big art and craft stores that sell art supplies for a very affordable prices. They have to be really, really affordable. And I like them because they are perfect for beginner, intermediate, and even advanced, because after all, is the person, right? Is the way that you use them that will make the difference. But these are perfect to start. They are medium body, so they are not too liquid and they are not too thick. Okay, so we're going to use the water when we need to rinse the brush, but we are not going to do the same that we did with the watercolors, right? Because these colors are already diluted. They come, they are ready to use, and we don't need that huge amount of water that we needed when using watercolors. And then, of course, a pencil for sketching. And once I switch the camera so you can see my hands, we are going to review a little bit the material that you need. Just pause the video, have yourself set and ready, and then practice with me. Mostly if you are a beginner or a child watching this video, I really encourage you to practice with me. You can always pause the video, you can go slower, you can finish after I do, but it's good because we have that illusion that we are together practicing, which I love, like the idea and the energy that we can create in that way. But also for me, you can hear my feedback and my guidance much better. If you are maybe a beginner or an advanced, you can just watch the practice and do it at your own convenience, whatever works for you. And I'm gonna switch the camera now so we can start the practice together. Okay, friends, here we are. I want to show you my palette. This is a plastic palette that you can find in the same stores that I talked to you before, and it's very affordable. If you do not have a palette, or if you don't want to buy one, you can use a paper plate, plastic plate, even a piece of cardboard. It is okay. Something like a surface that can hold your colors. I prep for myself, as you can see, not a huge amount, because we always had the opportunity to pour some more, but you don't want to waste it. But I put the palette that I'm gonna use. And actually, if you notice, I'm pretty sure that you did, I on purpose select colors from the cold side of the color wheel and the warm side of the color wheel, plus the white if I need to make the color a little more pastels and lighter, or black if I want to add the darkness, right? These are the two tones that we're gonna use. So this is a good exercise also to combine together both sides of the color wheels. And if you didn't practice with me the colors wheels, make sure that you go back to the videos, right? Then I will place this one over here. As you can see, I'm using a piece of copy paper just bigger than my paper, just because I want to make sure that I don't spill the painting around. Let's try to keep the stations as clean as possible. And as I always say to my students, art can be a little messy, but we try our best to keep everything organized. This is the pencil for which I sketch, and today it's also going to be a nice introduction to still life. How can we just sketch a nice, well-balanced, proportionate and harmonic still life, which is different from the landscape. A still life is everything that we set in front of us. You can have a bottle, a vase with flower, fruit, whatever is not alive, whatever is not moving, whatever is not a portraits, so people, person, whatever is not a landscape and outdoor scene is what we call still life. Okay, so for the still life also we always set, remember when we did the landscape that we set the line of the horizon. For the still life we kind of set the line for, let's say, the table. I will do a vase with flowers because I love them. It's very practical, simple, and I show you the right step, like the steps to take. So here our line of the horizon will be basically the line of the table. Now, when we do the vase, we don't want to put the vase exactly on the table because we want to give the idea of this three-dimensionality, right? This something that is like closer to us because it's in the foreground of our paper on the bottom. So maybe we set the base for the vase below this line. Then we are going to develop the vase, and please feel free to change the shape of the vase, to change and add the details. If you are an advanced and intermediate student, you can really push this practice a little more than I will, creating your own vase, adding details to this vase, adding details when it's time to put flowers, etc. If you are a beginner, you can follow me step by step. Now, if you have an eraser, if you want to erase this line, you can erase it or you can leave it because with the painting, we're going to cover everything, okay? As you can see, these two lines are not perfectly straight, but they just kind of, they curve a little bit to give this idea of the three-dimensionality of the vase. Then for the flowers, something that I teach my students, very nice, you set like the center, you sketch the center of the flowers that you want in the position that you want them. Let me refocus this and see what happened, much better. And maybe one over here. Make sure that you fill this space with not too many, but not too little flower, because if you have only one or two, you will have a huge background, right? So we want to create something that is balanced. That doesn't mean that in the future you can do something, you cannot do something with just one flower. It's very dramatic. You can break this rule. But for today, we just kind of learn how to create the proportionate, like a well-balanced still life. And then look what I do. I just sketch with very light and very dynamic lines the petal. Okay, so go slow. You sketch the petals. They can be all the same type of flower if you want. They can be different type of flower, whatever you want. Remember, the petals do not have to look perfectly the same because flowers are natural. So I know that they are pretty symmetric and they're pretty similar, but if a petal comes in a different size or a little different shapes, there is no reason for you to erase it. There is no reason for you to panic or to stress. Remember that we are learning how to create a nice still life, but the focus of this practice is not of the perfection of the landscape that we create, but is actually of the practice of the technique of strokes, okay, that Van Gogh used in the past. So we create an implied texture, so an optical illusion of texture, and this one should be the fourth. Maybe you can have the water inside. This is going to be the level of your water, and we're going to add maybe some leaves. So sketch your still life, make sure that you feel the space, which is another element, by the way, space. You feel the space properly, like not too busy, not too empty. And you have let's say that you imagine to divide this paper in four, you have some elements in every space. Then something that I encourage you to do mostly if you are at the beginning, like a beginner, because everything could happen actually with a painting, right? But I suggest you to create decide where is the light coming from, right? The light will hit your piece from the left, from the right, from above or from below. Above and below, they are really more difficult in the practice, so I suggest you to have the lights coming from this side or this side. You make your choice, and according the side that is hidden by the light is going to be lighter, and the other one is going to be darker. So if the light is coming from here, for example, this is going to be the shade that I will have, the custom shadow. This is what we call the shadow of the vase reflecting on the table. And you know that all of this, and you can even do these scribbles with the pencil just to set the super light. You know that this is going to be dark, the darker side. Okay? And also when you will color the vase, this side of the vase is going to be darker. Okay, so let me do these scribbles also over here. So you have your vase central on a table, you have your flowers and your leaves, and then you decided that the light is coming from this side, and you have this side of the pictures will be definitely darker than the other one. Then now we start to paint. I'm very excited. So this is when the fun will become. Let me see if I can okay, I don't know why it's not like focusing properly as I wanted to. Let me see. I don't know. Well, we started to paint and then it will refocus. I don't know why it's getting like a very, very light. It will come back. It's coming back. Yes, and today is so bright in Utah. We have such a sunny day. So I'm going to start from the background, and I think that I will use my cold palette to paint the background. I'm gonna start with the dark blue, and look at what my brush does. Instead to spread the color traditionally, I will actually use strokes. You see, I touch and release, touch and release, touch and release. And I repeat this movement because remember, we are trying to recreate the impasto technique by Van Gogh, and we kind of want a little bit of real texture on our paper, right? Because when it dries, we might be able to feel it with our fingers. So although it's gonna be very different because we don't have the same oil painting that Van Gogh used to use, but we have like acrylics, but it's okay. We can pretend. In art, we can pretend. And we can use what we have. So you scoop, I'm gonna try to show you that's better. You scoop a little bit of color and then you keep painting. And then you scoop again and you keep painting. If you leave some white gaps, don't worry. What it is important, and it's gonna be a little challenge for my beginner students or very, very young students. I know that you feel challenged by the fact that you have to do strokes, 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 strokes instead to spread the color. But believe me that it's going to be such a wonderful exercise for your fine motor skill, and you will love the result. It's going to be something very different. If you go inside the flowers by any chance, it's not a problem, because remember, painting is a matter of layers. So you will paint over and over. This is why we usually do the background first, so we can go very well between the flowers and around the petal. And if something happened, then we paint the petal on top and we fix it. That doesn't mean that you cannot start painting from the flowers and then do the background. It's really something personal, right? I'm just giving you the easy step to follow for a successful practice, but then, as I always say, each one of us is a different artist, and each one of us approach the practice, the same practice, in a different way. So don't forget to put some color also between the petals and the flowers, because the background is basically everywhere, right? Around and behind the flowers. Now I'm gonna start to mix a little bit this lighter blue with the darker blue, and I mix them in the middle. So I still have the pure darker and the pure lighter, but I'm going to kind of start to create a different lighter tone of blue. Just I want it here to be a little lighter, since we are going out of the darker area of our drawing, because I decided that the light is coming from this side. If you decided the opposite, this is gonna be your lighter spot and this is gonna be the darker one. I don't know why today it's difficult for me to speak in English. I wish that I could do everything maybe in Italian. Maybe one day I will do a video all in Italian and I can put some subtitle and you can all have fun and follow in my hand and see if you can take an online lesson completely in Italian. Sometimes, let me tell you, I have so much fun with the students. There are days that I feel completely fluent, and there are days that I say, what is that? Why is I cannot pronounce this word today? English is a very tricky language. Let me tell you, friends. My goodness, and you have so many spelling rules, but then you break them all the time. So it's really confusing. But anyway, since I'm Italian and I move my hands a lot when I speak, you will be able to understand what I'm saying, even without understanding all the words that I say. This is what I say to my students. Don't worry, just if you cannot catch the words that I just pronounced, look at my hands and you will get it. And we all laugh about it. So I'm going over, you see, with the second coat, and I'm not pressing the brush so much on the paper, because if you press so much, you're gonna mix up what you like, the dark blue that you started with this lighter. So you want to make sure that you're very gentle and you just go a little bit. Now I'm picking the dark again because I'm gonna just feel it. And doing this, you're already like building layer on layer. So texture and texture that you will be able to feel once the artwork is completely dry. And let me tell you, I love this technique, and sometimes I use it for mindful practices that we will do in the future. It's just I feel that it's so, once again, you repeat the same gesture over and over, and you just focus on the colors and the way they will like expand on your piece, in your piece, and then you keep going and going. It's so just mindful. It's so like you need to be present in these experiences. So this is what makes this experience mindful. Remember, I'm going also between the flowers. We don't want to, forget that the background is everywhere. And remember, if you're covering the stem of the flowers, it's not a problem because we are going to paint over. I keep doing my background like that. I'm gonna go. Remember, mostly my beginner students, you will be tempted to do traditional strokes, but refrain yourself to do that. Like try these strokes. If you need to go slower like I'm doing, find your rhythm. And we keep going. Let's see if I can find a nice music for us that we can play maybe a little bit in the background. You see why it is important to have a piece of paper, like a bigger piece of paper or something to cover the table that you're using, so you don't have to do a huge cleaning at the end and everything is protected. Remember, friends, that it's very important to take a good care of your supplies. And if you're practicing this at home or in a studio, wherever, you need to always be able to clean up very well after. I will never stress this concept enough. It is right and respectful to keep our supplies and everything that we use extremely neat, clean, and organized. It's gonna make you feel better. It's gonna make your supplies last 3 times, longer than if you mistreat them. Keep going with your little strokes. I didn't tell you that I chose this palette, but if you wanted to choose something different and different colors, it's absolutely fine. Even if your flowers, you want them pink or purple or whatever, you know now the colors in the color wheels because we did many practices about it. Make your own choices as an artist. Choose your own colors and the combination of the color that you think will be good together. I think that I'm gonna pick a little bit of white now, and I'm gonna light up a little bit of this blue, make it a little lighter. When you mix, don't take the whole color, just save some of the colors so it stay pure, and you always have the pure colors that you need. But you know, you mix them, part of the white with part of the color, so part of the black with, you know, depending if you want the color to be lighter or darker. But just save for yourself also the color as it is, like the pure color that you picked at the beginning. I'm lighting up this because I want the light, the difference between this side and this side, to be a little like stronger, to point out that the light is really like hitting this way. Remember, my friends, once again, I know that I'm repetitive, but I'm a teacher, so I know that I need to constantly remind my students, it doesn't matter if your vase is different, if your still life is not like mine, it doesn't really matter. What it matters is that the technique of strokes. So focus on the technique that you're using to color more than on the beauty of the picture itself. Again, I'm lighting up a few part between, like the leaves. I'm going to remark some of the pieces inside. Okay, now I'm going to rinse my brush in the water, and then I'm going to just dry it up a little bit on the paper. We say that we don't want it to have it too wet, because these are acrylics, so they are ready to use. And as you notice, they're not too thick and heavy, and they are not too liquid, so they are just perfect as they are. And now I'm gonna start to have fun and do the flowers. And let me see, I think that I'm gonna use with the light, I'm gonna start with light yellow, and on the petal I will use exactly the same technique that I use for the background. So strokes. So in this moment where I'm practicing, I really like, I like to imagine that we are all practicing together in this beautiful, beautiful art studio, maybe somewhere in the nature, a studio with huge windows, and we can all like enjoy the outdoor, even stay indoor, and we practice together. And I can hear you laughing, and I can hear your voices. This is what I like the most to be a teacher, the opportunity that I get to connect with kids and teach them, guide them, and they teach me so much as well. Now I'm gonna mix a little bit this darker yellow with this yellow to make it just slightly darker, and I will use it for this petal, which is you know, behind these flowers. So this flower is gonna probably be a little darker than this one, the first one. And now I'm gonna use this darker yellow and mix it a little more, so I have more, and I can actually go again. Maybe this was too a little brownish. You see, I'm not going over the whole petal. I want a part of the petal to be lighter just to create more interest and a little idea of movement and implied textures. Here, our friend, implied texture. Mix it a little bit. Feel free to turn the page around, as we say. You have to find your own way to practice in a comfortable way. So make all the adjustment. You don't have to copy my way to practice. Make adjustment. I wish that through these videos that you're following with me, you're learning a little by little. You will become more like a comfortable, not only about the element of art and design, because you will understand them better. You will understand exactly what they are and how to use them to create your own original piece. But also when we use different technique like a watercolor, acrylic in this case. In the future, we will use oil pastels. Whatever we are using, you kind of find your way to use the media. You find your personal connection with that media. I want this to still be light. This one a little darker. When you have this nice opportunity to paint and spend 30, 45, 50 minutes painting, I just highly encourage you to relax and focus and just forget about everything, what you did before, what you have to do after, which is something for me very challenging. My brain is always working and speeding, but we need to learn to slow down and resettle. This one we're gonna do it much darker. It's probably the darkest of the petals. And this one again. Now, if you sketch as I did with the pencil, very using very light and dynamic lines, you will be able to cover entirely the pencil lines with the painting. If you mostly for, I know that is a challenge to go very light with a pencil for young students and beginner. If your lines are like a heavier and darker than mine, you might not be able to do so, but then you can decide if you want to do a black outlines with a black paint and brush or black markers. You decide that at the very end, because you will take a look at your picture, say, okay, I think that I want to leave it like that, or I think that in my case I should do some outlines. Again, a little darker because it's very behind, and a little lighter here. I'm going to pick a little bit more yellow. When you do the second coat, remember, barely touch the paper, really gently. I'm probably gonna clean a little bit the brush because I want to get the light yellow again. And remember that we are not scrubbing the brush, but we are gently touching the paper. I'm gonna rinse the brush, and then I will pick a little bit of this like a light burnt sienna and a tiny, tiny little bit of black. Let me just show you and move a little bit of painting over here. So I pick a little bit of this and a little bit of black on my brush, and then I mixing them to create a very, very, very dark brown. You mix it nicely, and when you have it, I'm gonna use it to the center. And I'm tapping the brush. If you feel safer using a smaller brush, go and get a smaller brush, and then you do the center of the flower. First, I will set this dark tone. Remember, the center also doesn't have to be a perfect circle. Now I'm gonna tap a little bit of white. I'm gonna mix it to this brown, maybe a little more because it was very, very dark. And I create like a lighter tone, and I will tap this lighter color inside the center, always creating some lighter, you see, strokes, tiny, 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 mostly on one side, because remember, the light is hitting from this side, so we want to be able to try to represent the light hitting this flower. And also because when we use always like a dark and lighter tone to get tones together, we can actually give the piece more interest, so it doesn't look so flat, right? So plain. I think it does to give us more, a little more movement. And then again, the darker one, and you go on top, darker. And that's it. I'm gonna rinse the brush. Remember, this practice is not about the perfection of the still life, that is about learning the technique of strokes, pretending to be a Van Gogh for a day, and enjoy this approach to implied and real texture. Now I'm gonna work on the leaves, and I'm gonna mix this bright green with sort of a more turquoise and darker green. And I'm gonna start to do the leaves. Always the same technique of strokes, strokes, strokes. You see, I tap and release, tap and release, tap and release. If you wanna go slower, go slower. Find your rhythm. And remember to breathe, right? You need to master the amount of paint that you scoop with the brush. It cannot be too much, but it has to be enough to create these little strokes that when they dry, you will be able to feel with your hands. And this is a very good practice for our fine motor skills to approach the painting process with a different, very specific technique. Is an extremely good coordination exercise, right? To coordinate our brain, our hand, the way that we hold the brush, and the way that we move the brush and we tap the paper. I'm playing with the dark and the light green. And remember, when you go over, you have to be very gentle. If you scrub the paper, like if you push this brush too much on the paper, you will basically remove the painting that you are setting, and we want to avoid that. I know that it is not easy, but I know that you can do this. And now I'm gonna color these two leaves over here. I was very lucky in life, and I was, when I was living in New York City and also in Italy, in Rome, I had the opportunity to see many of Van Gogh pieces, and also I traveled to Amsterdam to the Van Gogh Museum, and I got the opportunity to see many of his painting, live, and they are just outstanding. It's like so beautiful, and this texture that we are trying to represent here, it's so thick, like so present. It makes those pictures look like alive. It's fantastic. I feel that we should we are all grateful to Van Gogh that, like many other artists at his time, he broke the rules and the conventions, and he did something unique and different. He paid the consequences for doing this because people did not appreciate his art at the very beginning, but he stayed true to himself, and he kept doing what he was meant to do with his life, which was being a painter. We can bring the green down inside the vase, because maybe you want a clear vase. If you don't, you will be able to paint it over, but it will make your vase inside and all the colors that you're going to use later very, very interesting. Even for the stem, I'm proceeding with the same technique of strokes. I don't paint the whole line at once, but I do strokes. Now I'm going to add a little bit of white to this green, just to add a third tone. And with this I can have fun. I'm not gonna repaint all over the whole leaves, but I can create a sort of interesting, spots of colors. I'm gonna grab the dark again. I'm gonna do more green on the stems here, try to fill these white gaps. Then I'm gonna switch and go back to my dark blue. And I am trying to kind of fill the spaces between the petals and the flowers a little better. This is gonna be a little challenging for my beginners. It's okay, take your time. If something doesn't come out perfect, so we know that perfection is really overrated and it's boring, and we don't, we're not looking forward to that. Like, we just practice and enjoy the practice and understanding what we are doing. So if you have some blue in the flower, it's not a big deal. Actually, it will make your piece more beautiful and more interesting. So you just want to avoid to have white gaps, because we would like the surface to be completely filled with this, with the acrylics, right? Pretending that we are interpreting Van Gogh work. Now you need to kind of grab the lighter blue, because this area is actually lighter. And you kind of go back around the petal. Here is darker again. Okay, now rinse, dry a little bit of the green. I'm gonna mix a little bit of yellow with this green to create a lime green. Remember the color wheels. If you want to keep the color wheels that we created together next to you to see how the colors and remind yourself how the colors interact between each other, do so. This is why we build a portfolio, right? So you can always look back and look at your practices before this one and say, okay, let me just grab my color wheel because I need to remember exactly how the colors interact and what colors can I use to have these colors. So what colors can I mix? Just a tiny little bit of the lighter. Lighter. Here, even a little bit of yellow. And so on. Now the table, I'm gonna mix some colors here because actually I didn't pick a specific color for the table. Maybe sort of brownish, so let's do, I'm gonna pick a little bit of this, place it in the center. I'm gonna have a little bit of black. And I'm gonna add a tiny little bit of red. Nice, very interesting. A burgundy, a brown with a touch of red, pretty dark. And I definitely gonna use for this part, which is gonna be our darkest. Go around and do strokes. Tap, that the color, do strokes. Strokes. Remember, do not spread the colors. Just leave this texture happening on the paper. Tap and release, tap and release, tap and release, tap and release. A little more. There you go. And now we start to light it up a little bit, but still pretty dark. I want it pretty dark for this side. For a long time, I had a difficult relationship with the brownish colors and tones, and now I really like them. I feel that these dark neutral tones really balance the brighter, like the brightness of this um, palette for the flowers, very bright and warm and intense. Hold the paper. And and keep doing the strokes, and then you will kind of make this brown lighter and lighter, because remember, we are going toward the light, at least in my pictures. Then if you did the opposite, you know where to use the lighter colors and tones, and where to use the darker. You see, today I cannot speak. My goodness. Well, thankfully we have my hands moving and the art project, and practicing with me is gonna help you to grasp the concept that I taught you in this practice together. If you feel tired, mostly I understand the teaching student, kindergarten, first, second grade, you know, this is can be a little intense, although very beautiful and very enjoyable. But if you feel tired, just take a break. Do not rush it. Take a break, and then you keep practicing a second time. We don't have to finish everything just right at the moment, but I prefer you to take a break and divide this practice in two, more than just rush the practice. I light it up this side, lighted it up more, and going on top with this nice texture. Remember, you see the second layer, you don't push or add too much pressure, and you just like do these strokes very gently on top of the previous strokes and on top of the first coat of color, and you will just let the acrylics do their magic. The fact that this type of technique of brush strokes takes a longer time compared to a more traditional technique, it is also very good because it allows us to explore more, investigate deeper what we are doing, why we are doing it, and the way that we are doing it. So I feel that this is the best practice to kind of, you know, refocus and stay present. Okay, now for the vase, I'm gonna try to do mix some red with the white and have a sort of like a pinkish magenta. Let's see how it goes. Probably I'm gonna use this. Try to use the strokes technique also when you do like outlines and stuff like that. We're gonna go over because I decided not to have a clear transparent base. And now I'm just picking more of the white. So little by little it's gonna get like lighter. Technique of strokes, technique of strokes. I am really fond of this technique. Just find it a very good exercise. Be a little darker here to make the transition. Don't be afraid to use a very dark tone next to very light. You know, we create a strong transition beautiful and very interesting. And more texture on the vase, you see? Beautiful. I really love this. Okay, I'm gonna rinse it a little bit very quickly. I wanna grab again some of the green because I want to fill this gap actually. I will do the green pretending that there are some more like leaves. You can do them with blue, whatever. Then I'm gonna pick a little bit of black and I'm gonna really create a darker green. Not too dark, but just darker compared to the ones that I use because I want to create a little more interest in the leaves, and I want to kind of be able to separate them. So I want them to be like, you know, a little darker. Definitely in between the petals, because we know that the light won't eat the petal here as much, you know, as would eat the sides and the tips of the petals and the leaves. And now here with these two friends over here. You need to be patient and do the tiny little strokes. You don't want to just cover everything that you painted. You want to build layers, right? And you want to be able to see the many different tones that you used from lighter to darker. Okay, I think that I have, this is pretty much done. I know that there would be something else to do when you paint. You want to be able to go over and over and take your time, but you know, we need to kind of close the practice. So I'm going to switch the camera for a proper goodbye and for quickly reminders and review of this practice. Thank you again for practicing with me. Okay, what a practice. Today's video was very long just because when we paint we need time, but this is why I don't want to speed it up. I just want it to be a realistic and organic practice exactly as it would happen in school. If you think that you might get tired for such a long practice, you can divide and break the videos in two parts. So you can start, for example, to sketch the still life and paint the background, and then in a second practice you can paint the inside. Now I cannot touch it because it's still very wet, but I cannot wait. Once it is completely dry, give it like 20 minutes at the max, because acrylic dry very, very quickly. This is why also I love to use them in school and in this type of practice. And then please feel with your hands gently on top and you will feel the real texture. In the meanwhile, you can also admire the implied texture, right, that was given by these strokes. So today we kind of review once again what texture is, what is the difference between real texture and implied texture, what are dynamic lines, which is an important element, the first element that we practiced about together, and how can we use this dynamic line to create an organic shapes like the shape of the flowers. If you have a different type of vase, if you have a different shape of the vase, if you chose a different color palette, it's totally okay. Remember that you have to do you, and you need to create your own personal connection with art. Now, once it's dry, once you feel the texture, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and to add the comment. I really would like to know, how did it go? Did you feel the texture? Were you able? Did you find this practice challenging, stressful, relaxing? How was it for you? For me, it was extremely relaxing, was challenging, but also embracing, you know what I mean? And Remember to save this piece inside your portfolio, inside the folder that we are creating together. So in the future, if you need to go and look at the example, look at the project because you are creating something similar or you want to build on that foundation, you have your piece ready. One final recommendation, my friends, you need to clean up your station very well. Make sure that you clean the brush with water and soap, you rinse them and you put them a tip up to dry. If you didn't use a reusable, disposable palette, and the cup, you also have to wash and rinse those. Make sure that you clean the table and you leave everything neat and organized. I am really thankful for your support and I'm really grateful for you to want to practice with me. And I really hope that you enjoy as much as I did. Thank you, and I see you soon with another video. Ciao a tutti!